Hey, 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 welcome to On the Fringe. I'm Gavin. I'm here with my good friend Dave. Since military hostilities have commenced between the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan in early February, they have continued until the present day, almost 6 weeks of warfare, airstrikes, artillery strikes across the Durand Line, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And now reports. Reports of what, Dave? Reports of talks with who?
I don't think they're talking with Donald Trump. No, no, no. They're
You
talking
don't.
to the Chinese over in Urumqi. So the Chinese are trying to mediate between Pakistan and Afghanistan to get this quote open war shut down for the time being
I,
anyway.
I don't think you don't have to put quotation marks around this, Dave. I think it's a pretty open war. There's been more or less continuous fire across the border. There have been airstrikes hitting as far away as Kandahar and Kabul, which is unusual. There has been a lot of strong diplomatic language going back and forth, even involving India to an extent. And this has is worth noting and it is worth emphasizing. This has killed hundreds of people in the last couple of weeks and has displaced hundreds of thousands across a border which is sort of characterized by displacement anyways. It has caused major problems within both countries. So
We're back. My internet somehow cut out. I have no
your
idea how
internet cut
why.
out?
Yeah, it
Shit.
did. Weird.
Well, this is recording to the cloud, so
We're back.
hopefully we're back. How long did you cut out for?
Last thing I said was the Chinese were holding talks in Urumqi between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Well, shoot, I may have gone on a little bit. Anyways, anyways,
When you're on the fringe, sometimes the internet is on the fritz.
on the fringe, on the fritz, who knows? Anyways, yes. So I was just sort of going back into the background, talking about the hundreds of people who were killed in the conflict. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. This has caused major public health crises in both countries. This
Hmm.
has been extremely disruptive to life in the region, but it has also not really been covered. And why do you suppose that is, Dave?
Gavin, there are too many answers to that question.
You're darn right there are.
I,
The
I,
main reason is Iran. Let's just say that. There are many other reasons as well, particularly in the United States, but in a lot of the world, it's mostly Iran. That's soaking up the majority of attention. And most eyes, I would say, outside of South Asia have been, and even in South Asia, to be frank, have been turned away from this conflict. However, the Chinese have not forgotten about it and are working very hard to get both sides to the negotiating table.
yeah, and
Why is that, Dave? Yeah.
well, let's just jump into this real quick. One reason also I think this is not getting a lot of coverage is because this is a very complex issue.
Hmm.
And you talked about this earlier with the Duran line. So it's a 1,600-mile border between Pakistan and Afghanistan that was created by
The
Imperial
British.
Britain. And the
Yes.
Pakistanis accept it. The Afghans never have and never will. And I think this is the heart of the problem because you have tribes on both sides of the border that are essentially divided down the middle. They don't understand or they don't care about the international boundary. And you have this as just adding fuel to the fire. The borderline is going to just continue to keep these countries at war or in conflict with each other, essentially because they're never going to understand or they're never going to accept that this is the border and this is not the border. And I think they don't see it in a clear cut way. And since they don't see it in a clear cut way, it's going to be very hard for them to actually have a very clear solution to this.
I
Maybe that's not
also
the right
think
way
that
to say this. But
No, but you're heading in the right direction. I mean, I think another, again, it's a very complex issue. It's not just the Durand line. It is the Durand line, but it's not just the Durand line. It's also the complicated relationship between the Taliban and the government of Pakistan, which has gone very far south since the end of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in 2021 and the departure of the American military. Those relations have taken a nosedive and they've not recovered. And the stated Pakistani reason for this conflict is that the Afghani Taliban is supporting Tehrik Taliban in Pakistan, also known as the Pakistani Taliban, which is a separate organization, but which has camps, has materials in Afghanistan. This is an ongoing problem. Pakistan has wanted the camps cleared. They wanted people deported. They wanted them shut down. The Taliban has basically refused to acknowledge this, blanket denial. There's also a sense in which the Pakistani government increasingly views, very ironically, I might add, increasingly views the Taliban as a proxy force for India. And actually, if you look at a lot of the statements the Pakistani government has made, they've been stating this pretty explicitly that they view a lot of the terrorist attacks going on in Pakistan as being orchestrated from Afghanistan with Indian collusion. But by the way, India doesn't do itself any favors because it kind of boasts that it would do things like that, but it would never get caught while it's kind of getting caught. So
yeah,
it's a complicated, it's really complicated. It's really geopolitically complicated. China has its own interests. China, I think, has a huge interest in these two countries not beating the snot out of each other. They have a massive economic, military, political interest in Pakistan. They formerly were invested in Afghanistan to a much greater extent, but they're tied in with Afghanistan because they need to keep it relatively stable. They have concerns. Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, they have major border concerns about. In order to keep that region stable from the Beijing perspective, they have to keep Afghanistan relatively stable. So again, it's just kaleidoscopically complex.
yeah. And then you have potentially the Strait of Hormuz, and you have oil concerns from the Chinese potentially losing access to oil that they were dependent on. You have Iran also. I mean,
Hmm.
that is going on right now too. We don't want to get too much into that because that's a whole totally different kettle of fish for the podcast. But the Chinese
Can of
have
worms.
deep concerns about the whole entire region. And I think for them, they see this as one area where they can step up and say, okay, we can actually mitigate some of the risk by trying to fill in this void and getting these two countries to stop.
Yeah. And that's what they're trying to do. And, honestly, I wish them luck. This is a brutal, I think ultimately pointless conflict that, is never going to be, it's never going to be completely resolved. As you say, that this goes back over 100 years to a certain extent. It seems pretty intractable. A de-escalation would be nice.
Yeah, and it's just
So
going
yeah,
back. I don't know if this is going to work because you had a de-escalation last year with the Turks and the Qataris putting one together and it held for a couple of months, and then sure enough, come mid-February,
and then it came back worse,
yep,
really. I mean, and I think for understandable reasons, those two countries are not leading this now. They both have other, maybe a little more pressing concerns. For the Chinese, this is an immediate they have, and again, because I think people forget this sometimes, they have a border with both countries. The Chinese have a direct land border with Afghanistan. They have a direct land border with Pakistan. They have a very healthy number of trade routes going through Pakistan and going into Afghanistan. So they are really directly tied into this. Before the Iran conflict started, Qatar and Turkish involvement made sense. Now I think it makes sense that the Chinese are stepping in and going, look, we really need to sit down and find a way to do this without shooting each other. Because it does actually negatively impact the entire region. So yeah, again, hopefully de-escalation occurs. Hopefully things calm down along the Durand line.
Yeah, at this point, it's all we can really do over here. But for
It,
you guys out there, thank you very much for joining in on this quick short. Even though it was kind of two shorts, we're going to mesh it into one. The internet did.
yeah, but if you're recording it to the cloud, it should have recorded the whole thing.
That would be cool. Okay.
I
This is the
hope, I
first this
hope.
is the
I have
first
no
time.
idea.
This is the first
I have
time in
no idea.
100 and something episodes that we've done where this is actually cut out.
Really? What about
Yes.
that one episode where you were in Vietnam and the
No.
power went out
No, that continued completely swimmingly. I was
and
using my
everyone
phone.
was in the hallway looking at each other awkwardly?
Yes, I remember that. I remember
I
that.
remember that. I remember
The fi the
busting a
fi
gut, you telling me about it.
the fi fire alarm was going off. That was a wild day. But I was using my phone to record that. Now
Yeah,
I'm using Wi-Fi.
too smart.
So
Okay, well,
we'll see what happens.
hopefully that'll have worked. Hopefully that'll have worked. Anyways, thank you so much for listening in. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for being a part of the On the Fringe community. And Dave, time to hit that button.
I'm still here. Transmission went through.